Hello, welcome to TANTV Talks. TANTV Talks is a platform where we have conversations that matter. My name is Ireti Bakare-Yusuf, and I will be hosting a show called Danfo Conversations. My guests today are from Nigeria. They are, between them, I think they probably have around 60 years or so experience in the feminist activism field. Now, let me introduce them. So we have Ms. Hilma Obebe. A quick intro. Hilma is an African feminist activist. She's also a writer with over 3 decades of experience working in the field. At present, she's the executive director of Alliance for Africa, which is a non-for-profit organization working on women's advocacy and human rights. And then I have Ms. Buki Williams. Buki is the executive director of Education as a Vaccine, an organization that works with young people to advance their rights to health and protection from all forms of violence. And last but not least, I have Ms. Azina Mohammed. Azina is a feminist lawyer, community activist, and holistic security trainer with a decade of experience working on human rights issues across all sectors. Azina is also the executive director of TEARS, which is an LGBT organization. Right. Azina.
Yes, I can hear you. Go for it.
Right. I need you all to be off mute. Azina, TEARS, what does TEARS stand for again?
TEARS is the Initiative for Equal Rights, and it is an LGBT organization based here in Lagos. And we work on advocacy. We also provide different kinds of needs to fulfill whatever people in our community need. So yeah, that is TEARS.
Excellent. Hilma, Alliance for Africa. What do you do there? Just a quick one.
A quick one. Alliances for Africa is a feminist organization. We do a lot of work around sexual and gender-based violence, women in politics, access to justice, and equal utilization of the law, really.
Excellent. Buki, Education as a Vaccine. I love that, actually. That's one of my favorite titles for an NGO. Education as a Vaccine. Quickly, tell us, what do you do?
So like you said, we work to advance the rights of adolescents and young people to health, specifically sexual and reproductive health and rights. And we do that in 3 ways. One, because we believe that young people actually are experts on their lives. So we build their capacity to be able to participate in decision-making processes and to be able to advocate for themselves and their needs. We push for youth-friendly services in Nigeria, because sometimes we don't want to provide sexual and reproductive health services for young people, including sexual and gender-based violence services. So we push for that. And then because we've been in this field for close to 20 years, we use our experience, our knowledge to advocate and advance policies at the local, state, national, and global level to advance the rights of adolescents.
Brilliant, thank you. Azina, you did sound a bit like a computer earlier. So if you can, I don't know whether your volume is better, if you can quickly tell us the work that TEARS does again.
TEARS is the Initiative for Equal Rights, and it is a feminist LGBT organization based here in Lagos, Nigeria, and we work to fill in the gaps that exist within the Nigerian society in services that are provided for LGBT people. So we offer clinical services, legal services, and we also do a lot of advocacy.
Excellent. Okay, so today's episode, this is our first episode of Danfo Conversations. So thank you all for accepting the invite. Today's episode is tagged, "What is the state of the war against sexual and gender-based violence in Nigeria?" I'm going to ask, we have several questions, and I'm going to come to each one of you, and hopefully I would like each one of you to contribute to each of the questions. So I think the first place to start from is where we were before. So tell me, if you think back to, I don't know, 10 years previous, what was the state of the landscape with regards to the war against SGBV? Hioma?
I think things are a lot better than they were because we've always had violence in our communities. And we've always had a level of silence. And every single one of us sitting around this table knows somebody who had been abused and nothing was done about it. An uncle touched you, an uncle staying the weekend, your dad's friend. I mean, my dad's friend touched me when I was 12. I think I was 12, 13. And I didn't really know what was going on. So I think it's really, really important to recognize that the violence has always been there. Now, what has happened and what is different is that the younger ones are no longer tolerating it. So social media has given them that personal distance to scream from the rooftops, not necessarily seeking justice, but seeking acknowledgement that there's been a trauma and they want it addressed in this way. They don't necessarily want, some of them just want the acknowledgement that this has happened to me, see me, rather than the silence. So I think it's important to acknowledge that there's been a big shift from 2001 to 2000 now, you know, where we are, 2020, there's been a big shift.
Okay, great, thank you. Buki, when you think back to 10 years ago, what goes through your head?
I think I have to agree at least with Ihama with the understanding that yes, there's been, you know, at least now we hear more about it. There's been more reports about violence. People are talking about it more. We're breaking that culture of silence. But I still think there's still so many gaps in terms of then what do you do with the survivor, right? And recognizing the different kind of survivors, right? Because often in Nigeria, we want a perfect victim, yeah? You want somebody who is, you know, you were raped by a stranger. You don't want to talk about it, that it happened in the family. You don't want to talk about that it happened in church or in a religious institution. You don't want to hear any of those things. And so it's quite critical to say that 10 years ago, at least, you know, you couldn't talk about it. But the truth of the matter is that we're still having similar conversation because violence is so normal and so pervasive in Nigeria. And like I was telling somebody the other day, at this point, it feels like it's a rite of passage, right? We all are bonding over trauma stories of just being born female in Nigeria, you know, or vulnerable person, you know.
Azina, tell me, 10 years ago, 10 years ago in Nigeria, working in this field, let's be frank, how ugly was it?
I guess it wasn't nice. It still isn't. But again, as two of them have said, there has been a lot that has gone into it. And I think one of the biggest shifts for me that I can see is the education that has taken place in that time, right? Where people are consciously aware now of a simple thing as consent, where consent now is universal, where young men who have denied over the time that they didn't understand what consent meant, now a significant amount of men know what consent is and can no longer hide behind, oh, she didn't say no, therefore it meant yes. Young women are also pushing back as to this violence has happened and I'm going to name and shame. I think we've gotten to a place where the structural issues within government are so bad that people are just looking for other ways in which to find spaces as survivors. So naming and shaming has been something that has been going on lately, but significantly within the field, there has been a little bit more coordination. There has been a little bit stronger asks, where in the past it was just, let us walk, just acknowledge that this violence is happening and we want to support women. Now we're getting inroads in different arms of government. We're building allies with different groups. And I mean, things like violence against LGBTQ women is now publicly acknowledged within the space. So there has been a shift, right? It hasn't been about holding the line. We've held the line and we've also pushed forward. So there has been small inroads that are being made.
Excellent. Let's talk rape and justice. Okay, so recently, as you've all said, social media has become, if you like, the amplifier of the voices of survivors in Nigeria. And they now no longer feel they have to wait for somebody to give them permission because they have access. And I think as it has done to the rest of the world as well. So recently, we had a young lady, Shaitan, who came out, told her story, told her truth on social media, and said the pop star, Dbanj, I believe his name is Dbanj or Dbanj, came out and said he raped her. Now, she also then followed through and said in her press statement, in her press release, she talked about police intimidation. She talked about an alleged abduction by the Dbanj's team, and if you like, public scrutiny of life, etc., etc. I want to talk about that in the sense of, would you say that's just business as usual? It's a common trend that survivors get intimidated by the police, or would you say it's rare? And if it's rare, how often does it happen? Let's discuss that. Azina.
Unfortunately, what happened to Shaitan, who accused Dbanj of rape, is the norm instead of the exception. The police have consistently been part of the issue when we discuss sexual and gender-based violence. Even not in cases of strangers, when rape happens within a family and somebody reports, the police turn you back and say, deal with it, it's a family issue. Right? Things like spousal rape and marital rape are not taken seriously because the police will turn you back and say, this is a man who paid your bride price, and therefore, what are you doing here? And many times, again, the police is being used as a tool to intimidate, to threaten, to bring violence upon survivors and their family. Many a times the police might sometimes, if you're lucky, actually try to broker some kind of settlement for you, but all the while ensuring that justice does not take its course. So far too many times, too often, the police becomes part of the problem. They become the people who re-traumatize you, because also I've also been in rooms where the police has been questioning survivors, and it's always about victim blaming, right? They say, what were you doing there? What were you wearing? Did you scream? Did you push? Did you shout? Did you say no? And this is as often as June 2020, where I was in a room where somebody was being questioned about a rape incident that happened. And these were the questions that the police were asking. So yes, too many times when a woman discloses that she has been sexually assaulted, the men will then proceed to go and lodge a criminal complaint against said woman and all of her supporters. Anybody who has spoken will be tagged as somebody who is it's conspiracy, right? Yeah, they usually tag the other person with conspiracy or accessory act after the fact, and they proceed to prosecute you. You'd be arrested, you'd be detained for days, and the wheel of justice is slow. It's slow for the women, well, it's slow for other people, but it's non-existent for survivors. So far too often, this is the norm.
Buki, what are your thoughts on justice? And of course, when I talk about justice, I talk from the point of view of reporting, then investigation, then prosecution, especially, I mean, and I always go back to when it's, if you like, high profile cases, such as Shaitan's alleged rape by Dbanj. What are your thoughts on that?
The truth about it is justice, access to justice in these kind of cases, like Azina just explained, is a deterrent, basically. It's a deterrent to actually wanting to report. When you understand what a survivor goes through, you almost are like, you know what? Leave it. Like, I don't want to deal with it. Because by the time you report, and then when you report, it's the thing about it is, like, organizations like us, you know, we have to support survivors, because often the survivors you know, are being harassed by somebody in their neighborhood or a parent or, you know, a close relative, something like that. And so they don't even have funds. So when you go report to the police will tell you they don't have paper. Apart from victim blaming that, as Zina already explained, they'll tell you they don't have money for investigations, that is not in their budget. So you need to pay for everything. If they need to go and pick up the perpetrator, you will give them money for fuel to go and pick up the perpetrator. Or if not, you use your car to go and carry that. You know, you have to pay for, you know, the medical services, except for places like Lagos where there's a SARC, because you need that evidence, right? And so you need to pay for those services. And then by the time you also, you know, need to ensure that there's a proper prosecutor who understands the laws, who knows what can be done, who understands the issue and the situation and can properly prosecute the matter. And then it would get adjourned like 3 or 4 times. So we get cases where it was like, remember that case that started 4 years ago? The same thing happened to us. A project we had actually ended in Kanu. We just got the verdict this year. We ended the project in 2016. And we're just getting the verdict on the case like a month and a half ago. So that's really the reality of trying to get justice in Nigeria. It's a uphill battle. People do not believe you. You know, there's so many stories. You need money, you need funding. You've had situations where people have had to move out of their neighborhoods because people are calling them, people are telling them what they're doing is wrong. Do they want to destroy somebody's life? So how do you relocate, you know, the family? And then there's also the situation that Azina said, in which you who went to report the case can then also be arrested for conspiracy and defamation and all of these things. So you now start to think, is it even worth it? Is it worth it?
Thank you. Hima, when I think, I mean, listening to Azina and Buki, clearly we don't just have a problem with the police. We don't just have a problem with the length of time it takes to get justice. We seem to have prosecutors who are either, I don't know, inexperienced or inept, if you like. What do you think it is, and what can we do to actually fix that?
Our prosecutors, our lawyers, magistrates, and judges are also members of our society. And therefore, they, as gatekeepers to the culture, take on board the norms and values of our society. But they're also perpetrators as well, because we have heard stories of magistrates, judges, prosecutors who have abused their wives or their girlfriends or their living lovers. And so that's not surprising. However, in a country or in a place where the system works and there are standard procedures in the administration of justice, regardless of the views of the judge, the magistrate, the prosecutor, you know, if he does rape, defilement of a minor, he's going to get a set number of years because that's what the law stipulates. In our case, what happens? A guy rapes a girl, child is under 18, the prosecutor can decide to give him 2 years suspended sentence. In fact, the prosecutor, the magistrate or the judge is not even following the rules. And that's where the problem is. So there's a lot of emotional sentiment to attaching accountability to these crimes, rather than a recognition that these guys are serial rapists. I mean, during this pandemic, speaking to the PPRO for Lagos State, Mr. Elkanah, he said that they caught a serial rapist that had raped 23 young women in a local government in Lagos State. Now, I was so shocked by what he was saying, and his annoyance was that from the first victim to the second to the last victim, nobody had reported him. And it was their lack of reporting that emboldened him to continue his assault because he was getting away with it. There was nobody to report.
Yeah.
And he was unaccountable. Nobody felt, oh, they'll beg the family, they negotiate, and then he will go and do it again. Then they will beg the family and negotiate. And that is the problem.
Wow. Now, we're coming to the end of the show. So before we come to the end of this side, I want to talk about this, what you actually said, which is the catching the repeat rapist, if you like, the serial rapist. Azina, I know that you studied law, you were a lawyer. Is it the law that's the problem? Or is it the implementation of the law that's the problem?
To be honest, is both. The period where one is supposed to come up with evidence is a bit too short. And especially because we know, I think in certain states, rape has to be prosecuted between 6 months to 2 years.
Right.
Which is an atrocity, right? And second, condition of countries that have laws, people do not use those laws to prosecute perpetrators. A typical example is the case of the legislator who was caught on tape assaulting a shop owner, right? So police decided to charge him under instead of using the Violence Against Persons Act. So the implementation of laws are something that people have used to get around after committing a crime, right? They know at the back of their mind that the arm of the law is short and will not come down hard on men. Yeah. So the laws are not sufficient. The police that is meant to protect victims of gender-based violence, suddenly their requests for evidence is astronomical, high, unreasonable, and that in itself is a problem.
Okay, very quickly, let me come to you lastly. The VAP Act, do you think it's made a difference? And please tell, because some of our viewers are not from Nigeria, so
yeah,
tell them what the VAP Act is as well.
Right. So the VAP Act is the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. And really, I would say currently in Nigeria, it's the most comprehensive piece of legislation on violence against persons. Unlike the penal code and the criminal code that we have and other laws, which have very narrow definitions of rape. But one of the things that's really important about the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act is that it expands the definition of rape, right? So that it's not only women and girls who can be raped, it's, men as well, boys. And then it also just talks in terms of like penetration. It's not just vaginal penetration, it could be any body part. So it really expands, what we understand as rape, because most of the definitions of rape was really just around consent, and sometimes they added age, but it really wasn't expansive enough. And the Violence Against Prohibition Act was able to do that, right? And it also included all forms of violence. It also included information on what how survivors can get help and what kind of help they could get, from medical to financial support. So so in a way, of course, because it was developed by feminists and gender activists, and they fought for it for 14 years. They definitely fought for a pretty strong law. There's still some things that are missing from there, like, being able to get access, to safe abortion in cases of rape and incest. So you've seen those kind of issues that fell by the wayside, and other things that ended up not making it into the law. And then the issue of the fact that it then needs to be domesticated in every state in Nigeria.
Right.
And currently, at this time, it's only been domesticated in 15 states. So other states still have to rely on laws.
And Nigeria has how many states?
36, right? And so, so the relying on that it's a little, devastating and heartbreaking, because we want it across the country. And so in that sense, yes, VAP was a really big win, but trying to actually domesticate it. And then, as Azina said, we have it in the Federal Capital Territory in Abuja, which is the capital of Nigeria. Then getting prosecutors to actually utilize it, that's another step. Because then you talk to people and they'll be like, what do you mean? What is it? What is a VAP? what is that? What are you talking about? And you're
Yeah.
like, okay, so the violence against women is this, and really highlighting and explaining what it is and getting people to understand and buy into it is another hurdle. So, but I do think it's a game changer. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. We're about to close, but Ioma, you mentioned earlier a SARC Center. What does SARC stand for our viewers who are not from Nigeria and who are also not in the field?
Okay, Sexual Assault Referral Center.
And how many of those do we have now in Nigeria?
We have, booking for me, we have 8. But I may be.
It's 18.
Excellent.
18.
Yeah.
18-ish, yes. But yeah, but you know, because states like Kaduna have 4.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have about 2 in Lagos.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Excellent. So to wrap up for the first episode, I think it's safe to say 10 years ago, we were kind of, on a rocky plane, if you like. 10 years on, we've taken a few steps forward, albeit there's still a great deal to go. Would that be correct?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us for the first episode of Danfo Conversation. That was intriguing, that was interesting. And I think a lot of our foreign viewers would have learned a lot more about the work that many of you are doing in the war, what I do call the war against sexual and gender-based violence in Nigeria. My name is Ireti Bakare. Join us again on the next episode of Danfo Conversations, where we will be continuing it, because it's not over. We have a bit more to go, and I'm not going to let these ladies go, so they're going to be joining me soon. Thank you, and goodbye.
The coronavirus has affected the African American community in many ways, including a drastic drop in blood donations. This is the time to take care of one another, and blood transfusions from healthy African American donors can be a life-saving treatment for patients with sickle cell disease or cancer. The American Red Cross adheres to the highest standards of safety and infection control and urges you to come out to donate. Please, make an appointment today at redcrossblood.org.
This is my house. My parents helped build it. Now we don't get wet when it rains. I don't get too hot or too cold inside. And I don't have to worry when the winds blow. This is my house.
This is my house. This is my house. This is my house. My house. My house.
I can play with my sister. I can play with my brother. I can play with my mother, my father, my family.
My family. My family. This is my house. This is my house.
I can study. I can be safe with my family. This is my house.
This is my house. This is my house. This is my house.
My house.
My house.
This is my house.
Visit Habitat.org to find out how you can help more families like mine have a safe, decent place to call home.
America, land of the free. It's at the core of who we are. Freedom. The freedom to live without fear, to drive through all 50 states, to sleep safely in our own beds, the freedom to jog where we please, to watch birds in the park, to wear a hoodie, the freedom to breathe. Before we celebrate the freedom most Americans have, we must fight for the freedom all Americans deserve. Because no matter your religion, gender, disability, age, race, all lives can't matter until Black Lives Matter.